For many authors, the terms story and plot feel interchangeable. Often, when we talk about plot and story, the terms are interchangeable. However, the meanings of these words in relation to fiction are different, and it is the marriage of story and plot that allows reader connection. When you think about a story, you may think of the series of events that gets you from beginning to end. In fact, that's exactly what a story is, a series of events listed in chronological order, the simple what that explains where and when the character is at any given time. But reader connection doesn't exist in a list of chronological events explaining the where and when. The desire to know why is as powerful, perhaps more so, than the desire to know what will happen or has happened. The what is the story. The why is the plot. And in that distinction lives the reader connection. Plot in storytelling relies on the causal relationship between events. What happens first? And what happens next because of what happened first. In other words, the deliberate arrangement of events which reveals their significance, be it emotional, thematic, or dramatic, is plot. If you think back to the Pixar story spine shared in 7 story structures to know and disregard, you can see the plot why baked into the story what fairly clearly. Once upon a time, you'll set up the before. Every day, you'll detail the hero's daily routine. But one day, something changes and forces the hero off their routine. Because of that, the hero tries, fails, and tries again to get back on track until finally you reach the climax, resolve the plot, and the hero wins. And ever since, you share your after image. Revealing the why, though, and emotionally captivating your readers relies on your character's stakes. Why does the story matter to them? Think of a big goal you currently have or have already accomplished. For this example, assume your goal is write a novel. Novels are good. Novels are creative. Novels start conversations, move cultures, invite change. You yearn to write that novel. And while doing it, you cope with the rough bits, solve problems in your process or story world, suffer setbacks, personal and fictional, and aggressively pursue your dream of becoming a novelist. What drives you to do all that? Never once have I talked to an author who answered, for the sake of writing a novel, when I asked them why they were writing. Instead, I've heard lots of aspiration in their answers. To show my kids their dreams are worth pursuit, or to share my thoughts about a culturally important topic, or to explain that the difference between good and evil lies in perspective. The list of whys given is as diverse as you may expect and highlights the importance of the character's why in fiction. The events don't matter nearly as much as does the way we feel about those events and what we do as a result of those feelings. Here is the reader character mirror. Readers yearn. They have desires. Things happen to them. They deal with problems. They work hard to get somewhere. They dream. But readers don't dream for the sake of dreaming. They dream because they relive and heal from anxieties or feel the need to prove something to themselves or someone else, or because they want to be loved, or because they fight against what's unfair, or they want to stand out or fit in or find purpose. The reader character mirror asks you to understand the why behind your character's what, so your character's plight may reach your reader emotionally. The story may be simple. Susan and her wife lived in a little cottage by a lake where the two swam before work each day. One morning, Susan woke to find that her favorite suitcase and her wife were gone. Susan swam alone. She went to work. She bumped into Leonardo. After work, Leonardo and Susan went to a pub together. Then Susan went home to bed. It's exciting, isn't it? The plot of this story is much more involved. Why did Susan's wife leave? Why had she taken Susan's suitcase? Why did Susan go to work after that? Who is Leonardo to her, and why did she go to the pub with him? Why did she break her decade-long sobriety to do it? When the reader discovers that Susan owned but almost lost the lakeside cottage before she met her wife, that Leonardo and her wife together helped Susan get and stay sober for that decade, thus saving both her and her home, the why of Susan's actions starts to get clearer. Here is a woman who's been deeply wounded by her spouse, a person she trusted with her life and security. Because Susan felt like her life was over with the relationship, sobriety no longer meant anything to her, and she started to drink again to forget. We no longer have merely a series of events. Instead, we have a causal relationship. Broken heart leads to broken sobriety. It doesn't matter that your reader's name isn't Susan, that your reader isn't married or isn't married to a woman, that your reader hasn't been sober for a decade. What matters is that Susan has had her heart broken and, as a result, made a reckless choice. That impulsivity in a moment of big emotion is something your reader can relate to. And in their relation to the big emotion, your reader inherently understands Susan's underlying need to feel whole. And as Donald Mays wrote in his book, The Emotional Craft of Fiction, when plot hook and emotional hook happen together, they work together. From the opening of your novel to the very last page, your plot should carry forward your story. And the best openings intrigue and involve your reader from the get-go. I've talked about story openings before in Get Your First Line to Make a Good Impression, and was relieved to find that when revisiting that article, I had previously encouraged curiosity and intrigue. Beyond the first line, I've given you the opening scene must-haves list. Revisit both of those articles or videos in the context of story and plot and ask yourself, beyond the series of chronological events, have I provided the reader with the why? And of course, plot extends far beyond the opening line or opening scene and is the catalyst that gets the character from A to detour 1 to detour 2 to detour 3 before arriving at B, while allowing your reader to bond with and care for them. Here are some ways to think about and test your plot why throughout your novel and emotionally connect with your reader. Consider your character's life at a given moment. Who or what do they feel strongly about at that time? Why? Write down all the reasons your character has for caring deeply and then provide the ones that matter to your reader. Think about a challenge your character faces, something they worry about. What is your character afraid will happen if they don't meet the challenge? Give that worry an aspect that only makes sense to your character. Can your character change their circumstance? Why or why not? Unpack your character's interior war for your reader. In a moment of big emotion, is your character totally lost or can they see the path forward? Is this a welcome or unwelcome feeling? What is coming for them and why? What is no longer available or accessible to them and why? What will happen if your character succeeds in their journey? Why will that happen? What about if your character fails? What does your character wish they could do instead? What would they like to say? Why do they feel they can't say it? What truly frustrates your character? What inner need remains unfulfilled for them? Can you make the need feel more urgent? Can you find a way to punish your character for carrying that need? In what way can your character act out and express their big emotion? What can they destroy? What can they attack? What awful or truthful thing can they say? What can they say now that they couldn't say before? In a moment of downtime when nothing is happening to your character, what inner turmoil is your character secretly wrestling with? How can you add tension to the scene to make sure your reader feels that inner turmoil? Taking time to unpack your character's why to explain the what and the where helps readers emotionally connect with your character because the character becomes the reader's mirror. As your character wrestles with their inner turmoil, so too will your reader, a reality only possible because of plot. So, how do you make sure you're plotting a novel rather than just telling a story? Leave your tips in the comments. Happy writing. P.S. Mark your calendars. This coming Sunday, September 7th, is my 100th writing advice article. To celebrate, I interviewed 2 authors whose short stories will appear in our Best of MetaStellar Year 4 Anthology and got their tips for building a writing career you love.